In the days long after the defeat of Sauron, the world of Middle-earth settled into a rare period of peace. But peace, like the clear skies over the misty mountains, is fleeting, and shadows often linger in forgotten corners. So it was for King Elessar, Aragorn, the last of the Dúnedain, whose reign over Gondor was just beginning. Yet even in the days of his rule, the memory of his travels as a ranger and the unspoken dangers of the wide world called to him. Aragorn sat in the high halls of Minas Tirith, the new white tree casting its pale light over the courtyard. The weight of the winged crown upon his brow was heavier than any helm he had worn in battle. The duties of kingship, though honorable, felt distant from the man who had roamed wild lands, fought in secret, and known the ways of shadow and forest. He remembered his time as Thorongil, the eagle of the star, and the many paths he had tread, paths that whispered of unfinished tasks. One evening, as a warm wind swept down from the north, a letter arrived. It was delivered not by a herald, but by a cloaked figure of the Dúnedain, one of his kin from the distant reaches of Arnor. The letter bore strange markings, sealed with wax in a design Aragorn did not recognize. Unfolding the parchment, the king's sharp eyes scanned the words, and his brow furrowed. "A shadow grows again in the east," it read, "not in Mordor, but in the forgotten lands beyond Rhûn, where even Sauron's grasp did not reach in full. The old darkness stirs. If the west is to hold, you must travel where no king has gone, for the evil in those lands remembers you, Thorongil." A chill crept over him. These were the lands he had wandered before the War of the Ring, in his guise as the mysterious ranger Thorongil. Even in those years, he had sensed there was more to that forsaken realm than even the wise could foresee. The call of duty was too great. Aragorn could not ignore it. Arwen, ever watchful, noticed the change in him that night. As they stood upon the balcony of the White Tower, gazing at the stars, she spoke. "My lord, your heart is troubled. What weighs upon your thoughts?" she asked, her voice soft as a summer breeze. Aragorn turned to her, his eyes shadowed with the knowledge of what he must do. "An old evil stirs in the east, beyond what we have known. It remembers Thorongil, the name I carried when I journeyed through those lands long ago. I fear there is more to be done, and I must leave the safety of Gondor once again." Arwen's face grew pale, though her strength remained. "Must you go even now? Your people need you here. A king's duty is to his people, but a ranger's duty is to the world. If I do not go, this shadow will grow unseen, and by the time it reaches us, it may be too late." She placed a hand on his arm, her silver eyes searching his. "Then go with my blessing. But do not forget you are more than Thorongil now. You are Elessar, King of Gondor. Return to us, my love." With that, Aragorn set his course. He would travel once more into the wilds, but this time not as a lone ranger. He called upon the sons of Elrond, Elladan, and Elrohir, who had fought beside him in years past. Gimli and Legolas, ever faithful companions, insisted on joining him, their bond too strong to let him wander into danger without them. The journey was long and perilous. They crossed the river Anduin and journeyed far beyond the borders of Rhûn, into lands few men of the West had ever seen. The sky grew darker the further east they traveled, as though the sun itself was hesitant to light the path ahead. Strange ruins of forgotten civilizations dotted the landscape, temples to dark gods and citadels built from black stone, their purpose long since forgotten. Aragorn felt the weight of history pressing upon him. These were the lands of the old evil, places where Sauron had once whispered his promises of power to men. But there was something more ancient than Sauron here, something darker. One night, as the company camped at the edge of a vast, cracked desert known as the Plains of Gorgon, a strange figure approached their fire. Clad in ragged robes with eyes like glowing embers, the figure spoke in a voice as old as the earth itself. "You are the one called Thorongil," it hissed, its words like the slither of a serpent. Aragorn stood tall, Andúril at his side. "I am Elessar, son of Arathorn, King of Gondor. Who are you, and why do you know this name?" The figure's lips curled into a malevolent grin. "You wear a crown now, but once you walked these lands in shadow, a ranger of no name. But we remember you. The East remembers." Before Aragorn could respond, the ground beneath their feet trembled. From the shadows of the desert rose creatures of nightmare, twisted, dark spirits, remnants of an ancient evil even older than Sauron. The company drew their weapons, and a great battle began, one that tested Aragorn and his companions like never before. The spirits moved like smoke, impossible to strike with sword or arrow. Legolas loosed arrow after arrow, but the creatures merely reformed from the dark mist. Gimli swung his axe, cursing under his breath. "These ghosts are worse than goblins." Aragorn, his keen senses sharp, remembered an ancient tale Elrond had once told him about the dark magi of the East, sorcerers who had wielded powers older than the Eldar, powers that bound the souls of men to the earth, trapping them between life and death. "Strike their hearts," Aragorn shouted. "Their weakness lies in the center of the shadow." Elladan and Elrohir, with their elven eyes, spotted the faint glimmers of light within the dark forms and moved with deadly precision. As they pierced the hearts of the creatures, the spirits screamed, dissipating into the wind. But the battle was far from over. From the depths of the desert arose a figure clad in ancient armor, a towering being of malice and power. This was no mere servant of Sauron. This was a warlord of the East, a king long forgotten who had once pledged himself to darkness. His voice echoed through the desert as he spoke. "Thorongil, you have returned to the place of your defeat. You will not leave here alive." Aragorn, weary but resolute, raised Andúril high. "It is not defeat that brought me here, but victory." The two clashed in a battle that shook the very ground beneath them. Aragorn, though mortal, fought with the strength of the kings of old. But it was more than his physical might that would win the day. Remembering the words of Elrond, Aragorn reached into the depths of his soul, summoning the light of Númenor, the ancient power of his people, and struck the warlord down with a single radiant blow. The victory was hard won, but the evil that had lingered in the east was finally vanquished. Aragorn and his companions returned to Gondor, not as mere travelers, but as saviors of the realm. The East, once a land of shadows, was now free from the ancient curse that had bound it for centuries. When they returned to Minas Tirith, Aragorn stood once more as King Elessar, knowing that, while his journey as Thorongil had shaped him, it was his duty as king that would define him. He had ventured into the wilds not for glory, but to protect the peace he had fought so hard to win. And though the shadows of Middle-earth would always threaten to rise, Aragorn knew now that light, his light, would always stand against the dark. And so ends the tale of Aragorn's journey to the east, where even the forgotten lands of old darkness could not stand against the hope of the Dúnedain.